The importance of a child care provider to the village that it takes to raise a child well is so important, and that is one of the reasons why United for Children exists.
Deanna Finch is the executive director for United for Children, a nonprofit organization in St. Louis that provides support to child care providers and after-school programs.
All of our programs work together to ensure that children have safe places to learn and play, that they have healthy foods and snacks, and they also have inclusive services for children with challenging behaviors, special needs like diagnosed or undiagnosed disabilities, or even social emotional developmental delays.
When you think about what kids learn in preschool, you probably think ABCs, counting, maybe some finger painting, and don't eat the paste. But then there's sharing, following directions, cooperation, emotional regulation. And while maybe that term is too complex for the average 6-month-old to grasp, the concepts are vital to incorporate at the earliest stages in development.
We all know kind of the process of teaching children to walk, or teaching children to be potty trained, or teaching them to spell their name. And so with the social emotional part, it is much harder because the children developmentally are only able to manage so much at certain ages, but it also is something that we don't spend a lot of time really thinking about and knowing how to break down.
And just as it is a social expectation to be potty trained going into adulthood, so is managing your emotions. Seems obvious, but we all know someone, or are even guilty ourselves, in the occasional outburst. So that's why there are programs to guide childcare providers in teaching these skills.
At very early ages, from 0 to 5, we're seeing increased anxiety and depression and misbehavior, outburst, loneliness, afraid, fear to be alone, fear to be away from parents. The stress and trauma that we as adults feel and experience, children are not immune to that. And the reality is that they need support too.
And that support is exactly what United for Children's Social Emotional Early Childhood Project aims to provide.
One of my favorite things actually is it's called the expressions. And so it's got little eggs that's got different faces on it. There's also, if I came up to you and said, oh, my kids don't know how to wait patiently, what would your response be, right? Like, I don't know how to teach them that either.
Becky Vogel is an inclusion specialist for United for Children, and after 14 years training childcare providers with the Social Emotional Project, she can definitely give you some pointers on how to have your kids wait patiently.
So one of the great parts of the project, we use the pyramid model, which is considered universal precautions.
The pyramid model for supporting social emotional competence in infants and young children is a tiered framework of interventions that promotes healthy development. In other words, it's kind of a flow chart for childcare providers to use when teaching social emotional development. The first tier, called Universal Promotion, ensures children are being raised in a safe and caring environment. Having predictable routines, stimulating play, and constructive communication is key for both the child's family and teachers. The second tier includes a more targeted support, which is for the children who might need a little bit more focused approach to learning these skills.
So if a child's not sharing, the behaviors that they're needing to learn is to be able to ask for a turn or to be able to wait patiently. We're not going to put a child in timeout because they can't tie their shoe, right? We're not going to put a child in timeout because they can't write their name, but we're very quick to put children in timeout if they don't know how to self-regulate.
The third tier is when a child has persistently challenging behaviors and hasn't responded to the general positive support techniques in the other two tiers. These children need a highly specialized plan of action to help change the trajectory these behaviors can cause.
So we do know that if we can get them, especially at that 3 to 4 age, which is why we focus so much on the early childhood component of it, that they can learn those skills, that they have a much better success rate in entering school, that they have a much better success rate in completing high school and going on to college, that they are able to get and maintain jobs. But they also just are much better people. You don't get somebody that's like getting road rage driving down the highway that's going to shoot at you that has gotten some of these interventions. All right, so I know that you've been doing a lot with breathing techniques and
Yes.
that you've been doing Tucker the Turtle with them. So I just brought these also so that you can share with the parents.
This is one of the many coaching sessions that Becky has with childcare providers, where she gives insight to solutions and age-specific resources to help children and their families who might be experiencing some difficulty in managing their emotions.
Those first 5 years of early education is very critical. And if those kids don't have those social and emotional abilities at that age, as they grow older, it's hard for them to express them. They suppress them. They don't let them out. They don't understand how to let them out and how to be vocal.
How does Lewis feel on this Tuesday morning? You feel silly, Lewis? How does silly look to you? How does that look? Can you say it? How does it look?
Dana Luster, although having worked with young children for about 20 years, is fairly new to her home daycare, having opened just a couple years ago. But it's safe to say she found her calling.
It brings life to me. You know, it's almost like a soul connection. Wait, can I say that? Okay. If you don't mind if I give a quick story. Absolutely. Okay. A year, maybe like last year, I had preschoolers. And we went on a walk. And there was this stick in front of us. Of course, as an adult, I walked over the stick. Kids, not so much. So they stopped and they talked about the stick and they asked me could they bring it back. So we brought it back, I set it on the floor, and I allowed them to talk to each other about what they can do with the stick. One of the kids said, let's just paint it. And I was like, okay, well fine. The kids said, yeah, we can do rainbow colors. Once the stick was done and painted, they was like, now this is a masterpiece.
So in other words, let kids be kids. A very simple interaction with a stick built creativity, collaboration, and confidence. And if we don't let that happen, Dana believes it will lead to deeper emotional issues down the road.
Anger, frustration, not forgiving, not understanding kindness, no empathy.
Adults call it emotional intelligence. So the earlier that we start building and improving those skills, the better off every single person will be.
For Living St. Louis, I'm Brooke Butler.